Part 1. The sky above the moon's surface was black and quiet, filled with stars that never blinked. On the far side of the moon, hidden from Earth's view, a small group of humans watched the void through thick observation glass. Lieutenant Kyle Dawson stood among them, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the distant speck growing larger in the deep. He had been stationed at the Lunar Defense Array for 6 months and nothing had happened, until today. The array was not flashy. It looked like a collection of metal towers and dish-shaped panels bolted onto the gray rock. But inside those towers were coils of superconducting wire, capacitors the size of houses, and targeting systems so precise they could hit a coin from 1,000 kilometers away. Earth had built the array in secret, not to start a war but to make sure no one thought they were easy prey. Most people on Earth didn't even know it existed. The government called it Project Iron Line. The soldiers just called it the Rail. Now, the Rail was about to speak. The approaching ship was massive, 3 kilometers long, shaped like a curved blade, its hull shimmering with a soft blue light. It belonged to the Cathari Concord, a coalition of alien species that had recently discovered Earth. They had sent peaceful messages at first, asking about human culture, technology, and intentions. Earth's leaders had replied with open hands and hopeful words. But something had changed. 2 days ago, the Concord stopped answering. Then their fleet appeared on the edge of the solar system. And now one of their flagships was drifting toward the moon without warning. "Comms are dead," said a young technician named Leo, his voice tight. "They're not responding to hails." Not even static. Kyle didn't answer. He watched the ship slow as it neared lunar orbit. Its weapons ports began to glow. "They're powering up," said another voice from the control room. Kyle turned. "All stations lock targets. Railgun 1 through 6, stand by." There was a pause. No one moved. Everyone knew what this meant. Firing the railguns would be an act of war, but waiting might mean death. Then the alien ship fired. A beam of violet energy lanced out, striking the lunar surface 50 kilometers east of the array. Rock vaporized. A crater formed in seconds. The shockwave didn't travel through the vacuum, but the array's sensors screamed with data: heat, radiation, electromagnetic pulse. They were being tested, or warned. "They're not trying to destroy us," Leo said, eyes wide. "They're showing off." "Or clearing the way," Kyle muttered. He made his choice. "Fire." The command echoed through the chamber. Deep below the surface, capacitors discharged in a thunderous hum. 6 electromagnetic rails, each over 100 meters long, activated in perfect sync. 6 tungsten rods, each the size of a small car and shaped like sharpened pencils, were hurled into space at over 9 kilometers per second. No explosion, no fire trail, just silent, invisible death racing through the void. The alien ship's shields flared as the first slug struck. Blue energy rippled across its hull, but it held. Cheers broke out in the control room. Then the second slug hit. The shield flickered. The third tore through it like paper. The fourth, fifth, and sixth followed in rapid succession, punching clean through the vessel's spine. Inside the alien flagship, chaos erupted. Alarms blared in languages no human had ever heard. Bulkheads collapsed. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship listed hard to port, its graceful curve now broken by jagged holes. It didn't explode. It simply died, drifting like a wounded animal. Silence returned to the array. Kyle exhaled. His hands were shaking. He hadn't wanted this. No one had. But the Concorde had come with weapons drawn, and Earth had answered with physics. Back on Earth, news of the encounter spread fast. Governments scrambled. Scientists debated. The public was confused. How could a simple metal rod destroy a starship? Experts tried to explain. Speed was the weapon. At those velocities, even a pebble carried the force of a bomb. Railguns didn't need explosives. They didn't need fuel, just electricity, metal, and time. The Concorde sent no message after the attack. Their ship limped away, engines sputtering, vanishing into the dark. But everyone knew they would be back. And next time, they wouldn't come alone. In the days that followed, Earth's leaders met in emergency sessions. Some wanted to apologize, to offer peace before things got worse. Others argued that showing weakness now would invite invasion. The truth was, humanity had no real fleet, just a few outdated orbital stations and a handful of experimental ships. Their only advantage was the railgun, a weapon most of the galaxy had forgotten even existed. Engineers like Lisa Tran worked around the clock in underground labs beneath Mars and the asteroid belt. They redesigned freighter hulls to carry railgun turrets. They turned mining drones into sensor scouts. They taught soldiers how to aim not at where a ship was, but where it would be. 3 seconds from now, 10 seconds, 30. Every second mattered when your bullet took minutes to cross space. Meanwhile, Kyle stayed on the moon. He walked the surface in his suit, staring up at the stars. He thought about the alien crew. Had they been soldiers? Diplomats forced to fight? Did they even understand what hit them? He hoped they'd tell their leaders the truth. Humans weren't primitive. They were desperate. And desperate people build simple, brutal weapons that work. The galaxy had laughed when it first heard rumors of Earth's kinetic cannons. They called it a myth, a misunderstanding. Advanced civilizations used plasma lances, graviton beams, singularity projectors, not chunks of metal shot from magnets. But the conquered had seen the truth with their own eyes, and soon others would too. For now, though, there was only quiet. The moon held its breath. Earth waited. And somewhere in the endless dark, a wounded alien ship carried a warning home. Do not underestimate the humans. They have railguns, and they will use them. Part 2. The story of the moon battle traveled faster than any railgun slug. Within weeks, it reached every corner of the known galaxy. On the Grand Council world of Virel Prime, where diplomats from 50 species gathered beneath domes of living crystal, the tale was met with disbelief. Then amusement. Then outright laughter. They fired what? Asked Counselor Zelkor, a tall drath with silver skin and eyes like polished obsidian. He leaned back in his floating chair and let out a low, rumbling chuckle. Metal rods? Without propulsion? Without guidance? Without even a warhead? Around him, other envoys nodded and murmured. To them, warfare was elegant. Ships dueled with beams of ionized gas. Fighters danced in formation, guided by quantum-linked minds. Weapons were smart, precise, and often beautiful. The idea of hurling unguided chunks of tungsten through space seemed not just crude, it seemed impossible. Clearly, said Ambassador Lyra of the Skal, her voice soft but firm, the humans use disguised plasma penetrators, or perhaps micro-singularity rounds. They are trying to hide their true capabilities. No one considered the simpler truth. It was too embarrassing to accept. A species that had only just left its home planet, a species that still used fossil fuels a century ago, had destroyed a Cathari flagship with what amounted to a glorified cannon. The galaxy preferred to believe in trickery. Back on Earth, human diplomats tried to explain. They sent data logs, sensor readings, even slow-motion footage of railgun tests in vacuum chambers. They described how electromagnetic coils could accelerate a dense projectile to incredible speeds using nothing but electricity. They emphasized that the weapon's power came not from magic, but from math. Kinetic energy equals half the mass times velocity squared. At high enough speeds, even a small mass carried devastating force, but the galaxy wasn't listening. The Interstellar Council dismissed the evidence as fabricated. Some claimed Earth had reverse-engineered alien tech and was lying to appear more independent. Others whispered that the Cathari had staged the attack to justify future aggression. Conspiracy theories bloomed like toxic fungi in the damp corners of galactic politics. Meanwhile, on Mars, Lisa Tran wiped grease from her hands and stared at a half-assembled railgun mount. She didn't care what the galaxy thought. She knew what worked. Her team had just finished retrofitting a cargo hauler, normally used to move ice from Europa, into a mobile artillery platform. It carried 4 railgun barrels powered by a compact fusion core salvaged from an old research station. It wasn't pretty. It didn't have shields or stealth coating, but it could fire a slug every 12 seconds, and that was enough. We're not building warships, she told her crew. We're building walls, and every wall needs a cannon. On Earth, factories that once made cars and smartphones now stamped out tungsten rods by the thousands. Rail yards in Texas and Kazakhstan were converted into coil-winding centers. Even schools joined the effort. Physics teachers showed students how to calculate impact energy, not for exams, but for survival. The Cathari conquered, humiliated by their loss, had gone silent. But their silence was not peace. It was preparation. They had sent envoys to the Drath hegemony, the Varel Syndicate, and 3 other major powers, warning them that Earth was dangerous. Not because of its numbers or its fleet, but because of its willingness to use barbaric weapons that bypassed all known defenses. Most allies shrugged. The Drath, in particular, were confident. Their warships carried layered energy shields that could absorb plasma blasts and neutron radiation. They assumed kinetic weapons would be no different. After all, no one had used them in warfare for over 2,000 years. Kinetic impactors were for asteroid mining, not combat. The idea that a simple slug could punch through meters of reinforced hull plating seemed absurd. But a few voices spoke up. On the fringe world of Elira, a retired Cathari admiral named Vexus reviewed the battle footage in secret. He watched the railgun slugs strike. No explosion, no flash, just sudden catastrophic penetration. He ran simulations. His blood ran cold. He sent a private message to Earth's embassy. Tell your people to stop showing off. You're making enemies you can't afford. Earth never received the message. It was intercepted by hegemony agents and deleted. Instead, the galaxy doubled down on its mockery. Comedy hollows depicted humans as cavemen in spacesuits, banging rocks together and calling it technology. Children's toys included earth cannons that shot foam pellets. In elite academies, professors used the incident as a case study in primitive escalation tactics. But not everyone laughed. Deep in the asteroid belt, a small Sakal trader named Jorik watched the same footage over and over. His people were nomads, scavengers, survivors. They respected efficiency over elegance. He saw the railgun not as a joke but as a solution. He contacted a black market broker on Ceres and asked quietly if Earth would trade schematics for rare metals. He got no answer, but he kept watching. Back on the moon, Kyle Dawson trained new recruits. He taught them how to track targets moving at relativistic speeds, how to compensate for light delay, how to fire in salvos so that even a dodging ship couldn't escape all the rounds. He didn't talk about glory. He talked about timing, patience, and the cold certainty of physics. We don't win because we're smarter, he told them. We win because we understand that speed kills. And we've got the fastest bullets in the galaxy. 6 months passed. Earth's orbital network grew. Railgun satellites blinked in the dark like silent sentinels. Mars built its first true warship, a boxy, ugly vessel named the Iron Mule, armed with 6 forward-facing rails and no frills. It couldn't outrun an enemy. It didn't need to. It just needed to hit first. The galaxy still didn't believe. They called Earth's buildup the tantrum of a child with a new toy. They assumed humanity would tire of its crude weapons and eventually adopt civilized arms. They never considered that sometimes the simplest tool is the deadliest, and so, when the Coalition fleet finally gathered at the edge of the solar system, 200 ships from 5 different powers, led by the conquered and backed by the mighty Drath hegemony, they came not with fear but with arrogance. They expected a brief show of force, a quick surrender, and a new human sector under galactic oversight. What they did not expect was the storm of steel waiting for them just beyond Jupiter's orbit. They did not expect silence before the strike. They did not expect to die not with a flash, but with a thud, a deep final thud as tungsten met hull at 3% the speed of light. But that was still weeks away. For now, the galaxy laughed, and Earth kept loading its rails. Part 3. The Coalition arrived at the edge of the solar system like a slow-moving storm. 200 ships painted in the colors of 5 different powers drifted in perfect formation beyond the orbit of Neptune. Their hulls gleamed under the distant sun, their energy signatures bright enough to be seen from Earth. They did not hide. They did not rush. They came with the calm certainty of those who believed the fight was already over. Aboard the Drath command vessel, Iron Will, Fleet Marshal Kor stood on the bridge, arms behind his back watching the star map. Earth was a tiny blue dot on the screen, surrounded by nothing but empty space and a few outdated satellites. He had read the reports. He had seen the footage of the Cathari flagship's loss, but he dismissed it as poor tactics, not superior weapons. A lucky shot, he had told his officers. They got one clean hit before the shield stabilized. It will not happen again. The plan was simple. The fleet would move inward in stages, securing key points. Jupiter's moons, the asteroid belt, Mars' orbit, before surrounding Earth itself. They would cut off all supply lines, disable communications, and demand unconditional surrender. If humans resisted, they would be crushed. If they complied, they would be absorbed into the Galactic Order as a protected but monitored species. What Core did not know was that Earth had been waiting. Not with ships, not with shields, but with patience and steel. Hidden among the icy rocks of the Kuiper Belt, camouflaged against the cold dark, were dozens of human platforms. Some were old mining stations, retrofitted with railgun mounts. Others were nothing more than skeletal frames holding coils and capacitors, powered by small fusion cells. They had no crews. They were controlled remotely from bunkers deep under the surface of Mars and the Moon. Their only job was to aim, fire, and vanish. Lisa Tran sat in a dim control room beneath Olympus Mons, her fingers hovering over a console. Around her, engineers monitored feeds from every hidden emplacement. There was no music, no chatter, just the soft hum of machines and the occasional beep of a targeting lock. "They're crossing the outer marker," said a young analyst named Dev. "Speed steady, no evasive maneuvers," Lisa nodded. "They think we're blind," she tapped a key. A silent signal pulsed through the void. Far out near Pluto's orbit, Platform 7 powered up. Its capacitors charged with a low whine. A tungsten rod slid into the breach. The targeting computer adjusted for drift, for gravity, for the enemy's predicted path. Then, with a jolt of magnetic force, it fired. The slug left the barrel at 9,200 meters per second. It made no sound. It left no trail. It was just a piece of metal flying through nothingness, aimed at a ship that did not know it existed. 3 minutes later, it struck the flank of a Cathari cruiser. The ship's shields flared, but only for an instant. Kinetic energy does not care about energy fields. The slug punched through the outer layer, tore through crew quarters, and exploded out the other side in a spray of molten metal and vaporized air. The cruiser listed violently. Alarms blared. But before the crew could react, a second slug from Platform 12 hit its engine cluster. The ship went dark. On the Iron Will, Core frowned. "What was that?" "Cruiser skyward is down," an officer reported, voice tight. "No explosion. No weapon signature, just sudden hull breach." Before Core could respond, another ship vanished from the formation. Then another. Panic rippled through the fleet. Ships began to scatter, shields flaring to full power, scanners sweeping for hidden enemies. But there was nothing to detect. No energy weapons, no missiles, just silent, invisible death falling from the dark. Back on Mars, Lisa gave the next order. "All platforms fire at will. Prioritize command vessels and heavy carriers." Across the outer system, railguns roared to life. Slugs flew in overlapping patterns timed so that even if a ship dodged one, it would fly into another. The coalition's formation broke apart. Ships fired blindly into empty space, wasting energy on targets that weren't there. A draft destroyer tried to retreat, only to be hit by 3 slugs in succession, its hull crumpling like foil. Kyle Dawson watched the battle unfold from the moon array. His hands were steady now. He saw the coalition's mistake. They were used to fighting enemies who announced their attacks with bright beams and loud explosions. They expected warnings. Humans gave none. "They're learning," he said quietly, but too late. Within the first hour, 40 coalition ships were destroyed or disabled. Not one human platform had been found. The railgun emplacements fired, reloaded, and shifted position using tiny thrusters, vanishing into the clutter of asteroids and ice. On the Iron Will, Core finally understood. "It's not energy," he whispered. "It's mass. Pure mass at speed." He ordered an immediate retreat to the asteroid belt, hoping to use the rocks as cover. But Earth had already turned the belt into a killing field. Hidden among the tumbling stones were more railgun turrets, mounted on old freighters and abandoned outposts. As the coalition entered the belt, slugs began to fly from every direction. A Varel carrier tried to raise its shields, but the slugs came too fast, too hard. One punched through the bridge. Another tore the hangar bay open. The ship spun out of control, colliding with a nearby asteroid. The Skal ships, smaller and faster, tried to flee. But even they were not quick enough. A railgun slug does not chase, it waits. And when the target moves into its path, it kills. By the time the surviving ships reached Mars orbit, they were down to 120. Their confidence was gone. Their formation was broken. And Earth's main defense line had not even fired yet. Lisa gave the order to stand down. The outer platforms fell silent. The coalition, battered and confused, drifted in the red planet's shadow. Unsure if the attack was over or if worse was coming, it was then that Captain Nate Ruiz, aboard the newly built Iron Mule, sent a single message across all open channels. It was not a threat, not a boast, just a statement: you came to teach us a lesson, now you've learned one, leave, or the next volley won't miss. The message played on every bridge in the fleet. Kor stared at the screen, his pride shattered. He had come to subdue a primitive world. Instead, he had walked into a trap built not with cunning but with cold, hard physics. He gave the order to withdraw. As the broken fleet turned back toward the outer system, Earth did not celebrate. There was no cheering, no victory speeches, only quiet relief and the knowledge that this was not the end. The galaxy had sent a warning. Earth had answered. And now the real war was just beginning. Part 4. After the coalition fled, Earth did not rest. The victory had been real but fragile. Everyone knew the enemy would return, and next time they would not be so careless. So while the world celebrated quietly in the streets, the engineers, soldiers, and planners worked harder than ever. Factories ran day and night. New railgun satellites were launched from hidden pads in the Andes and the Siberian tundra. Old cargo ships were stripped down and rebuilt into mobile firing platforms. Even civilian scientists volunteered, offering ideas for better targeting, faster reloads, stronger slugs. But Earth also knew it could not win a long war alone. They needed allies, or at least they needed the galaxy to stop seeing them as a joke. That was where Captain Nate Ruiz came in. He was not a politician, but he had a calm voice and steady eyes, and he had seen the battle from the front lines. The government chose him to lead a small mission to the neutral trading world of Illyra, a place where species from all corners of the galaxy came to buy, sell, and talk without fear of war. Nate took only one ship, the Iron Mule, battered but proud, and a small crew. Lisa Tran came too, not as an engineer this time, but as a witness. She carried data crystals filled with raw sensor logs, impact simulations, and footage of railgun tests. No edits, no tricks, just proof. Illyra was a world of glass towers and open markets floating above a calm blue ocean. Ships of every shape and size hovered in the sky, tethered to docking spires. Aliens walked the streets in robes, armor, or environmental suits, trading everything from star charts to spices. It was the perfect place to speak and to be heard. Nate and Lisa met with a council of neutral observers in a quiet chamber high above the city. They played the footage. They showed how a simple tungsten rod moving fast enough could tear through shields and hulls alike. They explained that railguns needed no rare elements, no complex guidance, just power and metal. And Earth had plenty of both. At first, the observers were skeptical, but one by one they leaned closer. A Varel scientist ran the numbers himself and went pale. A Sakal trader nodded slowly, remembering the rumors he had heard months ago. Even a Drath delegate, though silent, did not laugh. "This changes everything," said Elder Mira of the Illyran Council, her voice soft but firm. "If what you say is true, then your weapon is not primitive, it is efficient. And in war, efficiency wins." Within days, secret talks began. The Varel, long rivals of the hegemony, offered to share early warning sensor data from their outer colonies. The Sakal, practical as always, proposed a trade. Raw iron and tungsten from their asteroid mines in exchange for basic railgun schematics. Not the advanced military versions, but enough to build defensive emplacements. It was not an alliance, not yet. But it was a start. Back on Earth, the news lifted spirits. For the first time, humanity was not just feared, they were respected. But not everyone accepted the new reality. Deep within the Cathari conquered, a hardline faction led by Admiral Vorek refused to believe Earth could stand against them. He called the retreat a disgrace. He claimed the railguns were a bluff, that Earth had used hidden energy weapons and was now pretending otherwise to scare the galaxy. His followers agreed. They demanded action. Vorek gathered a strike force of 30 elite ships, fast, well-shielded, and armed with the latest plasma cannons. His plan was simple: strike at Earth's heart. Not the outer defenses, not Mars, but Luna itself. Destroy the moon array, kill the command staff, and cut off Earth's eyes and voice in one blow. He believed the humans would panic without their leaders. He believed they would surrender. He was wrong. The strike force jumped into lunar orbit without warning, using a cloaking field that bent light and masked energy signatures. They appeared like ghosts above the moon's surface, weapons charging. But Earth had been expecting this. After the last battle, Kyle Dawson had ordered a new layer of defense. Microsatellites no bigger than a shoebox, scattered in a wide net around the moon. They carried no weapons, only sensors. And they saw everything. The moment the Cathari ships decloaked, alarms blared in the array. Kyle didn't hesitate. All guns fire. The moon array had grown since the first battle. Now it had 12 main railgun emplacements plus dozens of smaller turrets hidden in craters and lava tubes. Everyone locked onto the incoming fleet. The first volley launched before the Cathari could even finish powering their weapons. Slugs screamed through the vacuum, striking with brutal precision. One ship lost its bridge before its captain could give an order. Another had its engine core pierced, exploding in a silent burst of fire and metal. Vorak's flagship tried to dodge, but there was nowhere to go. The railguns didn't need to track it perfectly. They just needed to fill the space around it with death. 3 slugs hit in rapid succession. The hull buckled. Atmosphere hissed into space. The ship spun wildly, colliding with a smaller escort. Within 90 seconds, 28 of the 30 ships were gone. Only 2 escaped, their systems damaged, their crews in shock. Kyle watched the wreckage drift. He felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. "They thought we were sleeping," he said to no one in particular. "We were just waiting." The message from the battle spread fast. This time, even the Drath hegemony took notice. Their own spies confirmed the reports. No energy weapons, no tricks, just railguns and timing. The galaxy finally understood. Earth was not bluffing. Their weapons worked exactly as they said. On Elira, the Neutral Council called an emergency session. This time, more species listened. Even some former skeptics asked for meetings with Earth's representatives. Trade offers poured in. Technology exchanges were discussed. The idea of a human seat on the Interstellar Council, once laughed at, was now being debated seriously. But Nate and Lisa knew better than to trust too quickly. Respect was not friendship, and peace was not guaranteed. Still, as they prepared to return to Earth, Nate looked out over Elira's glowing city and felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. Humanity had not won the war, but they had earned a chance to survive it, and in the quiet dark between the stars, the railguns waited, ready, silent, and true. Part 5. The Interstellar Council met again on Varel Prime, but this time the mood was different. The Grand Chamber, once filled with whispers and smirks whenever Earth was mentioned, was now quiet. Delegates sat straighter. Their eyes were watchful, not mocking. When the human envoy stepped onto the speaking platform, a young diplomat named Carla Briggs, chosen for her calm voice and sharp mind, no one laughed. No one interrupted. They listened. Carla did not boast. She did not threaten. She simply laid out the facts. Earth had never wanted war. They had built railguns not to conquer, but to survive. They had fired only when attacked. They had offered proof again and again and had been ignored. Now they asked only for one thing: to be left in peace and to be treated as equals. For the first time, the galaxy heard her. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed. Earth was granted provisional membership in the Council. It meant they could attend meetings, trade legally, and appeal for protection under galactic law. It was not full trust. Some species still eyed humans with suspicion, but it was a start. More importantly, it was recognition. Humanity was no longer a curiosity or a threat. They were a power. Back home, people did not celebrate with parades. There were no fireworks over New York or Tokyo. The victory felt too heavy for that. Too many had died in silence on the moon, on Mars, in the cold dark between planets. But in small ways, life began to change. Children drew pictures of railgun platforms in school. Engineers like Lisa Tran received quiet honors, not medals, but the respect of their peers. Soldiers like Kyle Dawson returned to Earth for the first time in years, walking under open skies without flinching at the sound of thunder. The galaxy changed too. Railgun technology, once dismissed as obsolete, began to appear in unexpected places. The Sakal installed small rail turrets on their trade ships for defense. The Varel tested kinetic barriers alongside their energy shields. Even the Drath hegemony, though they would never admit it, started research programs to understand how to stop a tungsten slug moving at hypersonic speed. The lesson had been learned. Sometimes the oldest ideas are the deadliest. Earth did not share all its secrets. The military kept its most advanced targeting systems and firing patterns locked away, but they did release basic railgun designs to neutral worlds and allies, along with safety protocols and training modules. It was not generosity, it was strategy. A galaxy that understood railguns was a galaxy less likely to test them. Captain Nate Ruiz stayed on Elira for a while, helping to set up the first joint human-alien defense outpost near the edge of Sol space. It was a simple station, built from recycled hulls and powered by shared reactors. Humans and Sakal worked side by side, calibrating sensors and testing communication links. There were misunderstandings, of course. Different species moved at different speeds, thought in different ways. But they learned, and slowly trust grew. Not everyone accepted the new peace. Admiral Vorak, disgraced and stripped of rank, vanished into the outer rim. Rumors said he was gathering exiles and mercenaries plotting revenge. Earth kept watch, but they did not chase him. They knew that fear made enemies, but patience could turn them into ghosts. Years passed. The solar system healed. New ships were built, not just warships, but freighters, research vessels, and even passenger liners. Earth began to explore again, not with weapons first, but with open hands. They visited worlds they had only seen in data logs. They traded wheat for alien alloys, music for star maps. They were still cautious, but no longer afraid. And always in the background the railguns remained. Not as symbols of war, but as guardians, silent, simple, and strong. They lined the orbits of Earth and Mars, watched over the asteroid belt, and stood ready on the far side of the moon. They were not hidden anymore. They were shown openly like a warning carved in steel. Do not mistake peace for weakness. Kyle Dawson eventually left the military. He bought a small house in the mountains of Colorado, where the air was clean and the stars were bright. Sometimes, on clear nights, he would step outside and look up. He would think about the alien crew he never saw, the ships he never knew by name, and the quiet moment when a piece of metal changed everything. He hoped they understood. He hoped the galaxy did too. Lisa Tran stayed in engineering. She helped design the next generation of rail systems, smaller, faster, smarter. But she always insisted on one rule. Every railgun must have a manual override. In case the computers fail, she'd say. Or in case we forget why we built them. The galaxy never forgot. The phrase "humans have railguns" became a saying among young cadets and old admirals alike. It meant more than just a weapon. It meant that appearances could lie. That simplicity could be strength. That even the smallest species, if pushed too far, could shake the stars. Earth never sought to rule. They only wanted to live. And in the end, that was enough. The stars watched. The rails waited. And humanity finally breathed easy.